Welcome to Fork in the Loaf. My name is Heather, and today I am doing one of my cleaning out my freezer things. We've not gotten our half a cow yet. We're just waiting on the butcher to call and say it's ready. But the freezer is cleaned out. And one of the things that I had to do, I had a big old box of beef bones in there. And I had already done some before. And this is my roaster that I have cooked the bones in for about 24 hours. And then I put it outside in the freezing cold, covered in my barbecue, and it froze. So I let it sit there and be frozen for a minute. And then I just brought it in, warmed it up a little bit so that it's liquid again. And so I am going to just show you how I go through the process of canning it, or what I do to preserve it. If you notice, there is, let me show you that again. There's all these, there's like floating fat. I did take most of the fat off. There's chunks in here. I have not strained it yet. I just scooped the bones out. Over here, I did a chicken carcass in the Instant Pot, and I'm gonna can that with this. I have a big canner. So the first thing I'm going to do is I just have an Instant Pot insert. I have a couple of them. And I'm just going to strain this through a sieve, or whatever that's called. I'm going to, looks like I'm going to have to do a little bit of moving this stuff around. There's a lot of solid things in there that's, and it's not hot, it's just liquid. And I think there's probably a lot of other stuff in there that's not so liquid, causing it to plug up. If I wanted to go even clearer, see, I don't mind my broth being kind of cloudy like that. I just don't like chunks in it. And I don't add vegetables to my broth, just because whenever I do a soup, I add vegetables to my soup. I don't need my broth to have that, and I really like the versatility of the broth being plain versus having a carrot flavor in it, or a celery or an onion flavor. And I will put all that stuff in when I make my soup anyway, so my broth does not need to have that in it. So these bones were from a grass-fed beef. This half cow that we're getting has been grass-fed, grass-finished from a friend of ours who has started, well, actually, let me rephrase that. The half a cow that we're getting is from a friend of my husband's that he works with, who on the side does this kind of stuff. It sounds like he's going to be quitting, or he's moving on and doing something else. And then in here, all I have is, I'm thinking fat and just the stuff that I don't really want in the broth. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in my little garbage can thing. In here, I now have a clearer broth. It does have some solids in it. I don't worry about that kind of stuff. I never have any kind of a soup or anything that can't have some of that in it, that wouldn't have that in it anyway. Now, mind you, this is not hot. I'm not doing a boiling hot product going into here. This is not hot. It's cool. It's like probably room temp, maybe slightly warmer than room temp. Same with this one. And it is going to go into my pressure canner with water that is only slightly hot. There's a big chip in that one. I always do a check on my jars, and it's better to do it beforehand. A lot of times I wait until I'm to the point where I'm cleaning the rims because I forget. So I'm going to use the funnel for this because I wish I could get, there's a small tinge of fat on the top. And I don't really like to get a lot of fat in there, but it's just not enough that I can even get it to move. So I'm just going to fill my jars to about a 1/2 inch headspace, and I should double check that real quick. And when I can my broth, I'm following the canning guidelines in here. Not necessarily that it has to be boiling hot. It's going to be boiling hot. By the time it gets to pressure, this will all be the same temperature. There it is right here. So I earmark, I post a lot of my recipes that I like to use. And so this says for beef stock, I'm going to process these jars for 20 minutes, quarts for 25 minutes. 9 times out of 10, when I need broth, maybe 7 or 8 times out of 10, when I need broth, I'm doing a soup and I will use a quart of broth. But every once in a while, I'm doing a gravy, or I'm doing something where I'm just trying to add a little extra flavor, so the pints work better for that. I have it, and we're kind of shrinking in size, so I'm going to pints. You can do this in quarts. So this says leave 1 inch headspace. All right. Okay. I think I did 1/2 inch headspace on these. We'll see how that works. And I'll fix it. And I do know that on these jars, when you get to that point there, you're at 1 inch. That is about 1 inch from there to there. So if you take your little measuring, like my measuring thing here, the inch is just to that bend right there. So there's, if you notice, there's this little lip right here, and then there's that little bend in there. When you're looking at this, that little tip goes to the very first bend. So as long as I just fill them all to that point, I also know, see, like that? Wait, can you see that? I also know that when my funnel is in here, look where it's at the bottom. It's right there at that 1 inch mark. So if I fill my jar and I stop it at, this is going to be very thick broth. I stop it at the bottom of my funnel. It's at the 1 inch mark. This one I got a little too full. And I could worry about it, or I could not. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fill these up, and I'll be right back. I'm going to show you another way, actually. So with it, when it was that full, I like to use a little bit of help there. But now that I've gotten it down a little bit, that one got a little too full. This almost looks like a gravy, doesn't it? I need another jar because that jar that's got a big chip in it. And just know, if you have a chip in the rim of your jar, just toss it. It's just not worth it. I mean, if it cracks, it creates, when you're pressure canning things, it does create pressure, and I just feel like it's not worth the risk of possibly swallowing glass or having it break because of a little bitty flaw in the structure. I'd just rather toss it than lose my product. So I have just a little bit in here. It's not going to be enough to make a pint, but it's too much to put into here. I could put it into, let's look and see what I got. I have these jelly jars that I got from my grandmother. before she passed away. When she moved away, I kind of inherited her jars. So see, look, even in that 8-ounce jar, it's still too full. So I'm gonna just maybe add just a little bit. There's not really any bubbles in this to, oh my dog, to have to take any bubbles out. So I don't have to debubble it for any reason, but I do have to wipe the rims before I put the lids on. And so I'm using vinegar. This is just distilled vinegar in a bowl and a clean paper towel. You can use a rag if you want, or I've used cloth napkins, trying to get away from using so much paper towel. Honestly, moving away from using a lot of paper towel is very hard for me. I use a lot of paper towel. And I've tried using more cloths and rags, which I do. I have cut down my paper towel usage a little bit, but man, I love my paper towels. Okay, and in here I have clean lids that I already washed, and they are brand new. They do not have to be kept hot anymore. I don't know what they did to change the seal, but the seal has been changed. And then cap it. And you don't have to cap it tight. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm not going to mark them now because you can definitely tell that they're two different. This is chicken, this is beef. Very apparent. You really only need to tighten it enough to keep that lid on. I just want to show you when I put my lid on, I'm literally just making it tight enough so it stays. I'm not tightening it down hard. If I tighten down hard, I run the risk of buckling, or I'm really not sure all the damage it does, but I know that a lot of the buckling that happens because you put your ring on too tight. It could be the lid that the cap that you're using. It could be that it's not a good cap, but often when you buckle, it's because you have your ring on too tight. It's on tight enough that keeping it, like the liquid's not pouring out, but it's not on so tight that it takes any force to take off. So it is January, beginning of January, and it is freezing outside. So my husband moved my Camp Chef downstairs to the garage. So I'm going to go ahead and move you down there with me, and I'll walk you through the canning process with me on this one. And I will set you up down there, and I'll be right back. So you're in a slightly different setting. You're in my garage. My husband has moved my Camp Chef down to my garage so that I can can throughout the winter, because it is, when it's below 40 degrees, when it's down in the 30s and the freezing temperatures, propane doesn't work that well, and Camp Chefs are propane. My canner is a 921 well-loved, well-used canner. So I don't know if you can see that. It says model 921, and I believe it's because it's a 21 quart pressure can. It'll hold 21 quarts, and that's what confused me, I think, when I bought it. I have a sister-in-law that has the 941, and that one holds a double stack of quarts, and that thing is a beast. When I ordered this one, I wasn't really quite sure what I was ordering. My mother-in-law has a couple of the 915s, and those fit 7 quarts perfectly. And I thought that's what I was buying when I bought this thing. And when I got it and I pulled it out of the box, I was like, oh, I got the wrong one. I was so disturbed, so frustrated. Anyway, and then I realized I could double stack pints in it, and I was like, yay. Anyway, so I'm going to start by I don't have any water in here yet. Everything is cold. My broth is cold. I don't have any water in here yet, so I'm going to put cold water in it. You always put cold on cold or hot on hot. And I have, how many quarts do I have? Or pints? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 16. 16 pints plus my little half pint. And I'm going to show you what I got going on here. I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 in the bottom. And then make sure you put one of these racks on the bottom to keep the bottom of your jars from direct contact with the heat. And then to make my double stack, I have to put one of these on top of the jars that are in there, and then I can finish stacking here. And I try to kind of keep it even. It's not perfect. And they will move around a little bit when they're in there. I'm putting this one on the top because I don't want it to burn on the bottom. I am able to tell the difference between the chicken and the beef just specifically by color, so I'm not going to bother marking on them. And if you notice right here on my 921, I have, and I think all of them have this, there's a notch right here. And if you look on the top of your lid, there's an arrow. And you're going to match the arrow with the notch. And then you're going to turn it. You have these little pieces right here that kind of lock on top of you or underneath your, whatever that is. I don't even know what that's called. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to make sure that there's an equal amount of space, and it's not perfect. I'm not taking a measurement to it. I'm just feeling, and I will eyeball and make sure that this space is pretty equal to the opposite space. And it's kind of getting old enough and well used enough that it's starting to find its natural seat. My mother-in-law's, I love her 915s because you stick that lid in there and it is exactly where it needs to go. You rarely need to shimmy or do any of this stuff. When I first got this one, there's a lot of tweaking and shimmying and doing what I'm doing right now. It's not as bad as it used to be. And then once you have this set in here, you're going to go opposite ends. So I'm doing this side, and I'm just going to finger tighten them. I'm not going to tighten them yet. And then I'm going to go opposite sides and just tight enough that they stay up there, and opposite sides. And then once I get them all on, I'm going to go ahead and tighten each one evenly. And you don't have to be so tight that you can't undo it. You got to be able to unscrew these after it releases pressure. Make sure that you know where your weight is, and because I live in the Treasure Valley of Idaho, which is above 2,000 feet elevation, I'm going to have 15 pounds of pressure. I'm going to go get a gallon. Oh my goodness, you guys, I haven't put the water in it yet. Oh, the dork. But really, thank goodness I caught that before I started it. I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm putting cold water in with my cold broth. And I do know that with the All-Americans, you want about 3 inches of water up the sides. And so I generally put in close to a gallon of water, not quite a gallon, sometimes half a gallon. But like right now with the jars in there, it's probably up to here, which is actually more like 4 inches. It'll be okay. Again, so now I'm going to find that notch. I'm going to find that arrow, and I'm going to put them together. Make sure these are all underneath. I'm going to make sure that all these spaces are fairly even. And I love that this is starting to find its seat. Another thing you want to do is you want to oil. I didn't show you that. I take oil around the rim. Not a lot, just enough to make it helps it seal. Where am I? And I think that's part of the reason it's starting to set so well too, is because I've been oiling it pretty good. Consistently, I should say. Not consistent amount, just every time I use it. I love the All-American. I have a Presto from my grandmother, and I've never used it. It needs a new seal. I've got a gauge put on it, but I haven't taken the gauge to the to get it tested yet. So I've just never used it. I've always used my new pressure canner or my mother-in-law's other All-Americans, the 915s. Okay, so I turned my propane on. I'm gonna get my lighter down here and start it. And then I'm going to turn on the flame. And the reason I do this is because I don't like the big poof. And now I'm going to let this get up to it'll start creating pressure and steam inside of the chamber, and when it gets to the point that we need to vent it, I will come back. It's going to take about 5-10 minutes. So I'm just going to keep an eye on it. I'll probably just watch a show down here. And I need to open my garage door. This is propane, so it is not safe to be in the same room with it without some sort of ventilation. So I'm gonna go crack my garage door open just a little bit so that there's some airflow. It'll get really cold in here, and that's okay. I'm just gonna sit down on my little camp chair. I'm just gonna sit back on my little camp chair. I'm gonna watch a show on my little phone, and I'm gonna wait for this to get to pressure, and I will be right back. All right, so right now you can hear it, and I'm hoping you can see all that steam coming out. So right now I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes, and I'm going to let it vent for 10 minutes. Okay, and I will be back in 10 minutes. All right, so my timer has just gone off, and it is noisy in here. So I'm going to find the 15-pound mark, and with using some sort of protective gear, which is kind of dirty, I'm going to carefully set that on there. Now, one of the things that you want to know, I walked in on this and it was already that crazy, and I was only gone for a couple minutes, so I know it wasn't more than 2 or 3 minutes, but I started the 10-minute mark for venting from the moment I walked in and started it. I am already up to pressure. So I'm going to turn my heat down. Let me show you the pressure. Okay, so I don't know if you can see my gauge. I'm already at 15 pounds of pressure. So I've turned my heat down. I'm going to keep that needle at 15 pounds. And just kind of adjust the heat accordingly. I will stay with this. I'm going to set my timer right now because it is at pressure. I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes. Hit start. And I'm going to keep this at 15 pounds of pressure for 20 minutes, and I will come back once I get to that 20-minute mark. So I have to jump in here real quick because I'm editing this video, and I realized that I totally skipped a part on this video, and it was the part where once it's done its 20-minute cycle, I turn the heat off to the canner, and then I let the pressure gauge that's at 15 pounds pressure, I let that come all the way down till it's resting on the 0, and I even let it sit there a little bit longer. So once I get done with that part of it, then I am going to once it gets down to, my cat's up here, say hi. Anyway, once that comes down to the 0 points of pressure, then I let it sit for a little bit longer, and then I open the seal. I unscrew all those things, and I do it cross from cross, and I unscrew them all, and then I let it sit for another 10 minutes once I crack it open. You want to kind of do that part slow, or you'll get a lot of siphoning. So I'm going to start the video again here because that's kind of where I started. So you'll see me here in just a second. All right, so it's been about 10 minutes, and these are now ready to come out. There's a chicken. You take this out. It's not super hot, but it's warm. Like I wouldn't want to hold it for long. Uh-oh. One of the joys of canning. One of the jars, the whole bottom just broke out. So now the worst thing about that, besides the loss of product, is it's a mess in here. There's a beef. So tomorrow, what I will do after I get done taking these all out is I'm going to let them sit here for about 24 hours. So tomorrow I will come down here and I will pack them all back up in that black pan that I transport them in. But you want to let them really sit for about 24 hours just so they have the opportunity to seal. It's not looking really good with all the junk all over these, but I think they'll be okay. But you really want to let them sit here now for about 24 hours undisturbed. And then when I come tomorrow to check on them, make sure they sealed, let them sit 24 hours. See, some of these buttons are down, some of them are up. Anyway, after 24 hours, they have sealed. They don't need to sit anymore. Any of them that did not seal, I'll stick in the fridge or I'll make a soup immediately with them. And then I'm going to I'll take them upstairs. I will wash them. Well, actually, I don't even know if I'll take them upstairs. I might just bring a bucket down here and wash them down here because they're going to get stored down here. And then I'll show you how I label them. So here is a beef broth that I did a couple months ago, and see how it's so gelatinous that it just barely moves. That's beautiful stuff. But I'm going to write beef on the top because I want to know that it's beef broth, and I don't need to put broth because it's apparent that it's just beef broth. And I put the year that I made it. These I actually made in 22. This is January. These I made a couple months ago in 21. Now, if I knew I was going to be making more broth again, I'd put the date. As a matter of fact, I might even just put 12/20 or 1/22 on here. That way I know that it was done in January. And if I do have that half a cow coming with more bones, and if I choose to make more broth because I don't have room for the bones, then I will put whatever the current date is. So all of this will get cleaned up. Yeah, anyway, that's how I can my broth. It's super simple. It doesn't have salt added. It doesn't have any spices added. It doesn't have any vegetables. It is literally just the broth bones. And the reason I do it that way is just because it's a little more versatile. I can do various different things with it. I don't have to have, like, if I don't want a carrot flavor added to it, there's no carrot in there. If I don't want onion in something, there's no onion in it. If I don't want bay leaf flavor in it, there's no bay leaf in it. It's just plain broth. And I kind of like the flavor. The chicken broth is really good. The beef broth, the only way I really like the beef broth is with stuff added to it. But that chicken broth I can drink just like chicken broth. So that's how I make my bone broth. That's how I can it. And I really like to have that on hand. I do have bouillon. I have that better than bouillon stuff. I do have some of that on hand in case I need to do something quick, but generally 9 times out of 10, I just use my bone broth that I can. It's inexpensive. It's the cost of really the flat lid that I use, this part. And I don't even think that's 20 something cents. So when I have the bones, like I often buy whole chicken and I will put it in my Instant Pot and I'll cook it in there, or I'll put it in the oven for an hour and bake it in there as a whole chicken. Once it cools, I debone it, whatever we have left over after dinner. All those bones I use in my Instant Pot to make a broth. And then sometimes I freeze it. Right now I have chicken broth in my freezer. And I will keep this in my freezer, you know, until I use it. The only problem that I have with this right now is I need freezer space. And so I should have pulled these out, thawed them, and canned them with that. But I wouldn't have had enough room to do that with as much broth as I got today. I think it's better for you than bouillon. It's better for you, especially if you have a salt limitation or any of those kind of limitations. There is nothing in there that you can't have unless you have a meat allergy or a bone allergy, or you know, whatever. Lots of nutrients in that stuff. I think that's all I have to tell you. So thank you for joining me on this adventure of a fork and a loaf. I hope you give it a try. If you like this kind of video, go ahead and click like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and have a great day, and I will see you next time.